Shalom. Welcome. I'm Rabbi Scott with Beth Yeshua Messianic Synagogue in Fort Myers, Florida. Welcome to our midweek teaching series on the Torah. We are winding our way through the Torah week by week as it is, and enjoy this opportunity to share with you and to discuss with you. You'll find an email address in the comments below, and would open that up to you and recommend that to you if you want to have some dialogue and discussion. I would look forward to that, and have a number of people who do indeed discuss these things with me, and we have some pretty good dialogues on the material. So if you would like, if you want to leave a comment in the comments below, of course, that works as well. Likewise, if you are following our ministry, a good way to stay connected is through subscribing. If you subscribe, then you'll get a notification of these teachings, and you will find that these pop up in your notification device, whether that be email or text or however it works, however you have it set up, and at that point you'll be notified every time there's a new video posted on the site. Lastly, for those of you who are supporting this ministry, again, just incredibly grateful. Many of you support us in incredible ways, and we are completely supported by your gifts and offerings. And if you want to make an offering to this ministry for the work of the kingdom of Adonai in Yeshua, then we would direct you to the place in our description where it says how to give, and you can go through the link there and give online. And we're just very grateful for that, quite frankly. Likewise, for those of you who are giving and have given in the past, again, just very thank you very much for your support, and just pray that this ministry continues to be a blessing to you. Without further delay, let us begin, and again with the optimistic hope and anticipation that you are going to use this time and this material to bless us, and so we just look forward to your work that gets accomplished during this time. Okay, beginning Parashat number 17, Yitro, for Jethro, in Exodus, in Shemot chapter 18, verse 1 through chapter 20, verse 23 or 26, depending on the numbering of your Bible, whether it's a Tanakh or whether it's an English translation. So this is Hebrew year 5781. We are in this cycle of the Torah, and this is the 17th Parashat. Again, just a summary of the Parashat, listening to the miracles that Adonai has performed for the children of Israel. Moses' father-in-law, Yitro, or Jethro, arrives with his wife and his sons, and they are reuniting the family there in the wilderness. And Moses describes to him the detail of the Exodus, the fleeing of Egypt, and so Yitro is so impressed by this that he joins the Jewish people, at least for a little while. Seeing that the only judicial authority for the entire Jewish nation is Moshe himself, Yitro suggests that subsidiary judges be appointed to adjudicate the smaller items, leaving Moses free to attend to the bigger crises and judgments and rulings. Moses takes this advice, and Bnei Israel arrive thenceforth at Mount Horeb in the Sinai waste, where the Torah is offered and given to them as in the form of a covenant. They accept this, and Adonai charges Moses to instruct the people not to approach the mountain, to prepare themselves for 3 days in order to receive the teaching. On the third day, there is the sound of the shofar that gets louder and louder and louder, and the smoke comes down and consumes the mountain, and we see the smoke and the fire, and then Adonai speaks with the people, giving them directly the 10 sayings or the 10 commandments. And loosely interpreted and translated, you are to believe and trust in Adonai. I am the Lord your God, Ani Adonai. Do not have other gods. Don't use his name in vain. Keep the Sabbath. honor your father and mother, do not kill, do not commit adultery, do not kidnap and take and withhold, and do not make false testimony, and do not covet. After receiving the first two commandments, the people, overwhelmed by this experience, request that Moses relay Adonai's word to them. And Adonai instructs Moses to caution the people regarding their responsibility to be faithful to the one who spoke to them. This summary that we use comes from Or Samech, which you can find online, and there's a number of other summaries online, all of which are very, very good. One other shameless plug, I mentioned Or Samech. Another one is a website called Hebrew for Christians, and the way you find that is Hebrew, Hebrew, and then the number 4, numeral 4, and then Christians, CHRISTIANS.com. And John Parsons is the curator there, and he has compiled just an incredible source of discussion and commentary and thought and teaching on all things Messianic, and has done a very good job. And it's a very thorough site, and has quite a bit of good, reliable material. Recommend that to you in your Torah studies and your Torah journeys. Okay, so where are we going to go this week? First item that I would like to discuss with you is the uniqueness of this experience. Nowhere else in the span of human history has an entire people been introduced to Adonai. Occasionally you'll hear stories of people who are introduced to Adonai, Aboriginal people, indigenous peoples who come into knowledge of Adonai through a profound experience where Adonai just reveals himself expressly to them. But nowhere else in human history do you have just an entire people like this who are introduced to Adonai. Even in paganism and in distortions of Christianity, such as Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, etc., most of these were revelations that were claimed by a single or at least a select few people. Likewise with Islam and some of the other religions. Nowhere else do we see a revelation to an entire people, and likewise, nowhere else do we see a revelation to everyone equally. They all received the same words. They all heard the voice of Adonai. They all received the same revelation. To all those who were born of Jacob, the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel. Remember, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. But also, and not just to Bnei Israel, but also to the mixed multitude who came with them out of Egypt. This sort of mixed bag of peoples, truly a sort of collection of individuals, all these received the revelation of Adonai equally, and in both specifically and in corporately. Further, this revelation, this invitation to come into understanding and knowledge of Adonai, is still given to all of mankind. That's the profound thing here. The Torah is largely and reliably faithful to its original delivery, and we can all take a great deal of confidence that this is the document that accurately represents what Adonai gave to Moses to give to the people. This document is still available for all of mankind today. Anyone can choose to know this revelation. This revelation is well, now it's free on the internet. It used to be you had to go to a bookstore and buy it, but for the most part now you can find even free copies if you have the right kind of equipment and technology and so forth. All right. So this is there's no other moment in history where this invitation was began and became a perpetual invitation. So all of the telescopic sort of genesis point of human history in their interaction and understanding of Adonai is the giving of the Torah at Mount Horeb in the Sinai Waste, Mount Sinai. All right. In this parsha, we have this Yitro character, Jethro. He's called a priest of Midian. It's a vocational title, a nondescript vocational title, as in you might have called somebody the blacksmith of Surrey, or you might have called him the merchant of Venice, and it's a title. It means that he had a title. Remember Melchizedek, the priest of the Most High God. This is an elevated position, a sacred, holy position. Um, so it's in one sense it's a vocational title, but in another sense it is an elevated position. It is something specific to a sacred occupation, if you will. We have lived in the West here so long under secular humanism that we no longer understand the concept of a priest. In history, in various cultures, you would have a community priest or a neighborhood priest. In pagan cultures, you'd have community shamans or community pagan sort of spiritists and so forth. We don't have that idea in Western culture because we've been secular for so long. This combined with the influence of Catholicism and combined with the absence of priests in Judaism. We don't have a priest caste in Judaism. We don't have priests in Judaism anymore. We did prior to the destruction of the temple. Now that we don't have a temple, we don't have priests. And these sort of three sort of variables have left us in Western society with a very distorted and broken view of priests and what it meant to be a priest. That is specifically that we have a secular culture which is devoid of much mystical, religious, and pagan influences. And we also have the influence of Catholicism with its version of priests. And then we have the absence of priests in Judaism. This has left us with a very distorted view. But what we're seeing here in the text is the priest of Midian presented in almost a sense of as a valid vocational title. There's no sense of cynicism here with this Jethro, the priest of Midian. I want to call your attention to another priest that is labeled in the text in the same fashion in the Torah, and that is Melchizedek. Melchizedek is the priest, and he is called the only priest of the Most High God. Not of other gods or towns or people. It's a very exclusive title and position. And I want you to see the polarity here, or the juxtaposition here, the contrast here of Melchizedek, the priest of Adonai, of El Elyon, contrasted with Yitro, the priest of Midian. Notice that Melchizedek is the only priest labeled of the Most High God. He's not a vocational priest of a community or this kind of thing. Now, returning to this Yitro, this Jethro, very little is made in modern commentary, in modern discussion about Jethro, about his role as a priest. Much is made about his role as a leadership consultant, if you will. Jethro is used in every book on leadership that has a biblical basis that I think I've ever looked at. All the leadership books talk about this idea of delegation. Motivational speakers use it, teachers use it, all in discussion of delegating or leading large groups. It's as if Jethro is the parable that is used for every leader who has to deal with this idea of delegating. But the point that I object to, though, is that delegation is not always the proper solution. To delegate something is not always the best course. One of the things that I discuss is the idea of crisis management, and in crisis management, all other management principles are off. You may not delegate. You may take back authority. You may do everything yourself because you're in a crisis moment, and things have to get done a certain way. When you're in a crisis management situation, you have a heightened sense of priorities, and you have a less flexible. You are inflexible with those priorities. In other words, while I might be very flexible at a four-way stop, if I'm in a crisis situation, and I've got to get my spouse to the emergency room, I'm not regarding everybody's courtesies at the four-way stop. I'm barreling through and honking my horn and flashing my lights because I've got places to go, people, and things to do. This is a crisis moment. Other decisions are made, other priorities are made in crisis management. And so just a point that delegation is not always the only valid solution to a scenario. But this is what's taught here through this discussion of Jethro, that he was to delegate, that Moses was to delegate his task. The people wanted Moses, and Moses was certainly exhausted. Moses is sitting here teaching the people and judging, and it's specific about judging. Notice that it's about judging here. The people wanted Moses, and Moses was certainly exhausted from all these judgments. But I think the point is that they wanted Moses like a father. Remember, Moses has replaced the Pharaoh. Remember, Pharaoh became the replacement father for Joseph. When Joseph went down into Egypt, Pharaoh became like a father to him. And there's a little tension that we can read between the lines and see in the text when we're discussing, when we're looking at when Jacob comes down, and you've got Jacob and the Pharaoh in the same room, and Joseph is looking at both of them, and it's the relational triangle moment, and I'm sure it was a little tense. Who's going to be the real father here? And Joseph makes various and assorted promises to Jacob in order to assure him that he's a good son of his father. So this is what happened, is that Pharaoh had become a father to Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, and Moses had replaced that fatherhood. Pharaoh was not a good father. He was an abusive, usurping kind of father. He took his role inappropriately and wasn't good with it, and abused the children of Israel, and so he lost that role with them. And Moses comes along, and the people are, you have a very real psychology here. We see this in abusive relationships, where if sometimes the abuser is removed, the victim is still longing for the relationship, because they have built up a psychology in that relationship, which is dreadful and sad, but that's a reality of human experience. So this is what I think is happening here, that people wanted Moses like a father. Moses is going to provide food via manna, the same in similar way. Also, Pharaoh provided food. Moses is going to provide water from the splitting of the rock. Moses is providing quail from the sky. These things come from Adonai, but they come via Moses, who is now like a father to them. And we see this kind of popping up a couple times throughout the narrative of their time in the wilderness. Further, it's interesting to note what Moses was doing here in chapter 18 that perhaps Jethro was objecting to. Verse 13, the next day Moses sat to judge the people, and they stood around Moses from morning till evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did for all the people, he said, "What's this you're doing to the people?" Which is an interesting turn of phrase. Why are you doing this to them? In other words, why are you doing this to them? As in, you're subjecting them to, you're making them come to you. Why are you making them come to you? Why sit by yourself alone with all the people standing around from morning until evening? In other words, why are you making them stand around and wait for you? And there's a little jab in there, a little accusation of perhaps some arrogance. Moses answers his father-in-law, "It's because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have an issue, it comes to me. I judge between a man and his neighbor. So I make them understand God's statutes and his laws." This is Moses' purpose and intention here. And Jethro has really, in almost a very almost deceptive way, or almost underhanded way, an unfair way, has accused Moses. And this is how I read it. And so for me, I can't think of this being a good thing. Perhaps, and so that's why I come to a contrarian position. While most people would find this to be a great example of leadership and delegation and so forth, I find it to be less that. And so I'm a little cynical of the outcome here. Moses is functioning here in this place with the people as a prophet and as a teacher. The people come to inquire of Adonai, and I make them to understand. Ve'odati et chukei Elohim ve'et Toratav. Remember, this is before the revelation at Sinai. I make them to know the Torah, or the law, the teaching. This is before the commandments. This is before the tablets. This is before everything, before the covenant, the mitzvot, the instructions, the regulations, the calendar, the sacrifices. I make them to know the Torah of Adonai. Where did Moses learn of the law of Adonai? Somehow Moses is able to convey either that which he has absorbed supernaturally, or that which has been conveyed upon him in a very real-time dynamic sense. In other words, somebody comes to him and asks him a question or wants to resolve a dispute, and Moses hears from the Spirit and knows the truth of Adonai and relates that to the people. If you look back at the episode of the burning bush, you'll see where Moses is going to function like a priest. He's going to function as a priest. He's going to lead people into the wilderness to make sacrifices to Adonai. But after Sinai, we have a flip. Moses is no longer a priest. Moses remains as this non-priest sort of prophet-teacher type. The Jews today call him Moshe Rabbeinu. Devarim, Deuteronomy says this, chapter 34, there never again arose a prophet in Israel like Moshe, whom God spoke to face. This is this Moses, this prophet-teacher. And so this is what we have. And Moses functioned for a time as a priest, but then we've got this moment where Moses does not continue in the role or the office, the institutionalized, the established role or the office of the priest. Rather, Moses continues as the prophet teacher. And what do we see? That, well, first of all, what we see, Exodus chapter 19, Shemot 19, verse 3, Moses went up to God, and Adonai called to him from the mountain, saying, say this to the house of Jacob, and tell Bnei Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now then, if you listen closely to my voice and keep my covenant, then you will be my own treasure from among all people. They're going to be a special treasure, for all the earth is mine. Verse 6, so as for you, you will be to me a kingdom of Kohanim and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to Bnei Israel. Moshe is going to confer upon the people that they are all to be a kingdom of Kohanim. We are all to be priests. We are all to be a kingdom of priests. This is profound. We had the two sort of parametric opposites in Melchizedek and in Jethro, the priest of Midian. And yet out of this comes this commandment that we're to all, this sort of conference of this anointing. We're to all be priests. So just some thoughts there. The next thing I'd like to look at with you is this is where we get into the Ten Commandments, which in the text it says that these are the things you are to say to Israel, and so some people say these are the 10 sayings or the 10 words or this kind of thing. It's written up as the 10 Commandments in most most Christian sort of references. All right, some of this comes from Rabbi David Foreman, which many of you are aware of. And not just from Rabbi David Foreman, but other teachers as well teach this. So just to give credit where some credit is due. There's a lot of analysis about the Ten Commandments, trying to make sense of them, trying to make sort of understanding of them, to break them down in a way that's something we can remember and sort of understand the direction and trajectory that Adonai was doing. So in that exercise, let's do that. What I'd like to do is take the 10 sayings and break them down into two columns. And on the right side, we're going to have columns 1 through 5, and then on On the left side, you'll have columns 6 through 10. So actually, to your vision, it'd be the right side and then the left side. And if Moshe was holding the tablets like this, he'd have the right side and the left side. And of course, we read right to left in Hebrew, so it'd be opposite. But in any way, it's hard to convey that over a video camera, but that's what it was. All right, so ideally what we think and what everybody kind of agrees upon and the text seems to indicate is we've got these two tablets, and you would probably have half on one and half on the other. All right, what I want you to do is take the right side tablets and label those 1 through 5, and then the left side 6 through 10. And we would expect that you would have 1 and 6 and 2 and 7 and 3 and 8 and so on and so forth all the way down. So what I'd like you to do is consider commandment number 1 and commandment number 6. Commandment number 1, or saying number 1, loosely translated, summarized, I am Adonai. And then commandment number 6, do not murder. How are these two connected? Is there a way of understanding these two as being connected to each other? Commandment number 1, commandment number 6. Okay. I am Adonai, and do not murder. Basically, the idea is this, that life and death belong to Adonai. The life of a person, the life of an animal, the life of something belongs to Adonai. And for us to take that is to assume ownership thereof. When you say I am Adonai, I'm God over everything, over all creation, is effectively what that's saying. You're expressing, Adonai is expressing his ownership, his prerogative over all of creation. To murder somebody is to decide life and death for another human being. And in that sense, that's an ultimate expression of ownership. So do you see how murder, do not murder, is a reflection, sort of a horizontal expression of this understanding of Adonai and his ultimate ownership and his sort of priority, his a priori, or his prerogative, if you will, in an existential sense. Okay, moving on. So now we're going to look at saying number 2 and saying number 7. So we're walking our way down the tablets, if you will. Number 2, you shall have no other gods before me. And number 7, do not commit adultery. How might these two be related? How might these two be expressions thereof? Or if we looked at it, if 1, I am Adonai, was a vertical expression or a vertical connection, a vertical understanding of Adonai, and then 6 was a horizontal expression of that vertical understanding. In the same way, if you would say that you've got a vertical understanding of number 2, you shall have no other gods before me, and how does that relate or connect to a horizontal expression, which is this, do not commit adultery? Adultery is to take another spouse, another person other than your spouse, other than the one you're in covenant with, or to take one from another who's in covenant with someone. You are betrothed to, you are in covenant relationship with your spouse, and adultery is to abandon those vows and commitments. In a very real sense, adultery is very much an expression of in similar way, idolatry is very much an adulterous kind of expression, because we're to have no other gods before him, in the same way that I as a married husband, I am to have no other women before my wife. And in fact, that would be to abandon the vows and the commitments that I have made. And that's what Adonai is saying here. Do not have any other gods before me. Do not put anybody in that place. So let's continue on. First, number 3, do not take the name of Adonai in vain. And number 8, do not steal. All right, so we're working on a pattern here, and the first few were fairly simple. The first couple were fairly simple as far as seeing these sort of vertical connection and horizontal expression as being sort of hinge points, if you will, of the text here. And it says this: do not take the name of Adonai in vain, and do not steal. So what might we see from this. To steal is to take something that doesn't belong to me and appropriate it as mine, to remove it from you and to make it less of yours. It is to change what you have as your identity. Your identity is made up of the things that you have. What could be more sort of central to what can they take? Remember Mel Gibson's line, they can take our homes, they'll never take our freedom, um, or something to that effect. So yeah, what is the last thing that somebody can take from me? I mean, they could take my life, but even if they take my life, they're not going to take this. What is the ultimate thing that somebody could take from me? Well, in the modern age, we have this version of in the modern age, we've got this version of it, identity theft, where I find that my identity has been stolen. Somebody has approximated my name and taken it, and made me less, made my name less by taking it and doing other things with it that I wouldn't otherwise do. In a sense, to steal, to take Adonai's name in vain is to steal from him, to steal his name, which should be reserved for glory. His name should be reserved for purity and holiness and power. To use that name, to appropriate that name for my own purpose against his purpose, or redefining that purpose unto my own purpose. In the same way that I would take somebody else's name, John Smith, and I might use it for nefarious purposes. I am taking that, I'm stealing that from him. And that's in a sense to take the name of Adonai in vain. In other words, to make it less than it is. His name is power, his name is truth. But if I choose to represent something untruthful, then in effect I've taken that name in vain. All right, so continuing on. Remember the Sabbath. Number 4, keep the Shabbat. And number 9, working our way down the tablet vertically, do not bear false witness or testimony. All right, so we might feel like we're a little bit lost in the weeds here. The last one was a little tenuous. Let's see if we can make the same connection here between number 4 and number 9. Do not bear false witness or testimony. What is the Shabbat? What is it that we're saying in the Shabbat? What is the Shabbat a statement of? Well, it's a statement of the goodness of Adonai in the form of completeness. What is done, what is finished, what is complete. The Shabbat is a statement of fulfillment and completion. In our understanding of Shabbat, salvation is completed as Yeshua is our Shabbat rest. He is our Sabbath rest. Let us strive to enter into that rest, it says. To keep the Shabbat is to proclaim again and again and again what is completed. To keep the Shabbat is to proclaim again and again and again what is accomplished, what is completed, and what is completed is good. It is very good. This is the language, the vocabulary that Adonai used at the time of creation on the just before the seventh day. It was all very good. To bear false witness, to lie, is to say something is not good, which is otherwise good, or to say something is good when it is not good. To not keep the Shabbat is to deny the completeness of the week in the sovereignty of Adonai. And this is what it looks like. I stop working Friday afternoon, evening. I stop working because I am by faith expressing the truth that my work is complete for the week. That this is completed in Adonai. That I have done what what in his sovereignty he set out for me to do. He set out for me a path this week, and if I was diligent and hardworking, then I will have accomplished what has been set aside for me to accomplish. To not keep the Shabbat is to deny that completeness, that sovereignty of Adonai, and is also to deny the completeness of my Shabbat rest, my Shabbat salvation in Yeshua. So do you see that? To not keep the Shabbat is a false witness or false testimony. No, things are not good. Things are not done. I still have work to do. The week is not finished. Things are not very good. And you can have that expression both in your spiritual salvation, and you can have that in your spiritual life, and you can have that in your practical physical life just as well. Um, all right, so we've worked our way now down four sayings, 4 commandments on each side, and we're to the final one. The 5th commandment on the first tablet would be honor your father and mother, and the 10th commandment on the other side is do not covet your neighbor's house. And I love this when it says, do not covet your neighbor's house, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey, or anything else that is your neighbor's. You know, it's like going through the list. In modern terms, it would be, do not covet your neighbor's house, or his pickup, or his boat, or his motorcycle, or his power tools, or his, you know, so on and so on and so forth. So how would we relate these two together? This really honor your father and mother, and do not covet your neighbor's house, or do not covet. What's really happening here? What is it? What is it that happens when you covet? What is it that you really want? Why did coveting here? Why is it verbalized this way? When we said do not murder above, it doesn't say do not murder your neighbor, your friend, your coworker, your cousin, your the person down the road. It doesn't say that. When it says do not steal, it doesn't say don't steal from your neighbor, your friend, your worker, your cousin, your brother. It doesn't say that. It just says do not steal, do not murder, do not commit adultery. Why does it say here do not covet your neighbor's house, manservant, maidservant, donkey, ox, or anything that is your neighbor's? Because coveting, in more ways than I think any other of the commandments, is something that just goes and goes and goes. It's never satisfied. Coveting is never satisfied. When you covet something, you always want more and more and more. And here's the example of it. So you go to your therapist, and I'm not sure where I got this illustration. This might be a David Foreman illustration from Rabbi David Foreman. You go to your therapist and you say, I'm just having a real problem with my neighbor Bob. I really like his pickup, and I really want his pickup, and he's got a great pickup, and I don't have a pickup, and I just really want his pickup. And the therapist says, okay, well, that's fine. So let's do a little thought exercise. I'm going to go call Bob, and I'm going to get your neighbor, and I'm going to get his pickup, and I'm going to give it to you. Is that going to be enough? Are you going to be satisfied? Let's imagine that I've just given you his pickup. Now you see Bob the next day, and what are you thinking? And you say, well, Bob has a really nice boat. And the therapist is like, okay, so we're going to get you the boat. And now how do you feel? Well, Bob has a motorcycle. You see, it never ends. And then the therapist asks the question, really, do you want Bob's pickup and his boat and his motorcycle? Or is it really deep down, you just want to be Bob? Really deep down, you just want to be somebody else. And if you dig even deeper, says the very clever therapist, you find out that it's not about that you want to be Bob, it's that you really don't want to be yourself. You really don't like yourself. You really don't like who you are. And that's the essence of honoring your father and mother, because that's where that comes from. I am the product of my father and mother, like it or not, good or bad. I am my father's son. I am my mother's son. I spoke with my mother this afternoon. It was a good conversation. It was great. But I am her son in all the positive and negative ways. There's no question. My father passed away a year and a half ago or so, and I am his son, and I will be his son even though he's long gone. I have many men that I love in my life, older men that might be described as a father figure to me. People that have been there throughout my life and this sort of thing. But they are not who my father was and who my father will always be. My father is irreplaceable. My mother is irreplaceable. And to go down this road of coveting and allow it to go, if I take off the brakes and allow the covet wagon to pick up speed, eventually I end up at a place where I just really don't want to be myself, which is a statement against my parents. What I really don't want is them. I don't want to be their product. I don't want to be son of my father and son of my mother, Ben Yaakov. I don't want to be Avraham ben Yaakov. I don't want to be that. And so that's the dilemma there. That's the trouble. My I have to choose whether I'm going to honor my father and mother. And this idea of coveting is at its ultimate expression, an expression of hatred of father and mother. I talk about this with kids. I don't know if I have any young people watching this teaching series, but perhaps there's some out there. But it's not all young people. It's older people as well. But the young people seem to be especially vulnerable to social media, to things like Instagram and Snapchat and all the rest. And these are entire fields of coveting. This is where you practice coveting on a digitally enhanced scale, and you get to present yourself as not who you really are. You get to present yourself as a myth or an archetype or a caricature of yourself. And you're surrounded by other caricatures, and it's a very difficult place to be and to be comfortable, because everybody's trying to out caricature each other, and really it's a statement of dishonoring your father and mother. And so we walk through this with some of our young people, trying to get them to grasp the essence of what's happening with social media. In any case, so these are the 10 sayings analyzed in this way. What I want you to see is to see this pivot point. And I talk about pivot points where we're like in this crux. We're in this pivot point between the vertical and the horizontal. The vertical being our connection with Adonai, and the horizontal being our connection with mankind. And I want you to see that in these 10 sayings, that we have this verticality in the first tablet with I am Adonai, and do not have any other gods, and do not take the name of Adonai in vain, and remember the Shabbat. All these connections to Adonai in a vertical sense, and then honor your father and mother, which is where we find our spiritual heritage, our spiritual father, our spiritual origin, as it were, is coming from Adonai. And then we have these horizontal aspects of this, with the do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, and then do not bear false witness or testimony, and do not covet. It's a horizontal expression of all these things. Our interactions with mankind are essentially and fundamentally an echo of our interactions with Adonai. And this is what I think is the underlying subtext of the Ten Commandments that I'd like to draw today. Again, our interactions with mankind are an echo of our interactions with Adonai, and this is why there's such a sense of detachment among moralistic people who don't have a connection to Adonai. It's a self-determined moralism, and it's in a sense creating half the tablet. They create a horizontal morality without having a vertical morality, and this gets them into trouble, and gives them a sense of loss and a sense of vacuousness in their spirituality and in their morality. And what happens is their morality is overruled by exigency, it's overruled by convenience, it's overruled because it's wearisome and exhausting. And this is the characteristic that we see in a lot of Western cultural morality systems, whether that be, like right now we're in the middle of a morality system around conservation of the planet and green energy and natural resources and not exploiting the earth and things like this. This is a morality system, and there's a lot of laws and agreements and rules and regulations built into culture and society, such that if I throw a tin can into the garbage and I don't recycle it, that's a sin. I'm guilty of a sin in that sense, based on this sort of modern cultural morality system that we're operating under right now. This is just a fact of modern life, a fact of all lives. All societies will have morality systems in place, and but those morality systems can be very vacuous without a connection to a source of morality, to Adonai, and so this is what Adonai has given us. Is He's given us a framework and a covenant for us to enter into, that grounds us and doesn't leave us vacuous. If our morality with Adonai was just a one-way morality with Him, if it was just a vertical morality system, and we were free to be anything we wanted with other human beings, this is what you see in paganism. In paganism, you'll fear the God, but you don't fear other people. You will fear the pagan deity, but you won't treat with respect or dignity or honor or love other people, and other people become very utilitarian to your own self-determinism. This is the huge flaw in ancient Greco and Roman pagan systems, and continues even to this day in some respect. But we see a vertical morality which is not connected or tethered to a horizontal morality in a lot of these moral systems. So that's my commentary on that. Would love any discussion that any of you might have along that line. Once again, it's been a delight to be with you, and look forward to more. If you are in town in Fort Myers, and if you'd like to join us for services, we are open for in-person services. Would love to have you, and love to meet you and fellowship with you. We would love to meet you, would love for you to join us for services and have you fellowship with us, and would love to discuss any of these things, of course, face to face, as much as people are comfortable doing these days. In the meantime, may Adonai bless you and keep you this week, and may He continue to guide you into all truth by His Spirit and by His Ruach. Thank you, and shalom, shalom.